In a small town in Texas, Ryan Taylor lived a seemingly perfect life. At 42, Ryan, a software engineer, had a stable job at a large technology company. He lived with his wife, Emily, in a comfortable suburban home. Every corner of the house depicted the life many people dream of: a neatly landscaped garden, a spacious living room, and walls covered with photos of happy memories. They were known by their neighbors as the ideal couple. Every Saturday afternoon, they invited several neighbors over for a barbecue in their backyard. Sunday evenings are often spent watching movies together, relaxing in front of the television. Emily works in the events department for a regional health network and is known as an exceptionally organized woman. She is an inspiring figure to many people at her workplace. Although Ryan is more reserved, he always supports and proudly celebrates Emily's achievements. Emily's career success is reflected not only in her achievements but also in the way she lives her life. Everyone sees them as the perfect couple, living a life full of happiness. However, behind all that happiness, Ryan feels that something is starting to bother him. Maybe it's the strange feeling he's been having lately, something that can't be explained in words. Even though his life seemed perfect, he began to feel a distance between himself and Emily. However, he didn't know if it was just a personal feeling that might arise over time. Ryan tried to ignore it, but something inside him told him that there was more than just a normal routine behind their relationship. After some time, Emily invited Ryan to go to Dallas, where a major health conference she was organizing was to be held. Ryan agreed even though he felt a little awkward about attending such a big event. This trip would be the beginning of a major change in their lives. As soon as they arrived in Dallas, the tension that had been building up began to surface, and everything would slowly be revealed. In Dallas, the health conference organized by Emily went smoothly. Ryan felt a little awkward amid the hustle and bustle of the event, but he tried to support his wife. Emily, with her extraordinary ability to organize events, immediately dove into her busy schedule, meeting with various speakers and conference participants. Ryan just followed behind, watching his wife, who was so confident in her professional environment. However, something strange began to emerge. Emily, who was usually very attentive to him, seemed busy and more focused on someone among the conference's keynote speakers. Dr. William Harris, a leading health expert who was invited to speak, seemed to attract Emily's attention more than just professionally. Ryan felt that something was different, a tension that could not be ignored. Emily was often seen glancing at Dr. Harris, smiling broadly, and talking longer than she should have. On the first night of the conference, Ryan felt anxious. He sat in a corner of the hotel bar trying to calm his mind. However, he couldn't deny that his thoughts kept turning to Emily and Dr. Harris. Something wasn't right. Even though he tried to convince himself that it was just his imagination, his uneasiness only grew. At one point, Ryan walked down the hotel hallway to get some fresh air. As he passed a slightly open door, he saw something that broke his heart. Emily and Dr. Harris were standing close together, talking in low voices before they finally kissed. Ryan's world seemed to collapse in an instant. The betrayal, even though he couldn't fully accept it, was revealed before his eyes. Ryan stood frozen in the hotel hallway, not knowing what to do. He felt as if he had lost control of his body. All the comfort, happiness, and trust he had built with Emily over the years were now gone. He tried to calm himself, but he couldn't avoid the deep feeling of betrayal. With a trembling body and a chaotic mind, Ryan decided to face this reality. He felt there was nothing left to hide, nothing left to trust. A big decision was coming soon, but for now, he just wanted to face Emily and express everything he was feeling. The next day, Ryan felt anxious. That morning, the atmosphere at the conference felt different to him. He could no longer look at Emily the same way. Every smile he gave felt empty, and every word that came out of his mouth felt fake. Ryan already knew everything, and he could no longer hide his feelings. In the middle of the event, Ryan couldn't hold back any longer. He walked with heavy steps toward the center of the conference, where all the attendees were gathered. In his mind, there was only one thing to do. He had to reveal everything. Without giving himself time to think further, Ryan grabbed the microphone and stood in front of the crowd that was engrossed in discussion. With a slightly trembling but firm voice, Ryan began to speak. "I don't know how to go on with my life after what I saw last night," he said, silencing the entire room. All eyes were on him. "Emily, I know about you and Dr. Harris," he continued, his voice growing louder. "I saw everything. I know what happened in that hallway. You betrayed me." Instantly, the room fell silent. Everyone present seemed shocked by the sudden and direct revelation. Emily, standing at the side of the stage, looked transfixed, her face turning pale. She hadn't expected Ryan to be so open in public, revealing the betrayal she had been hiding all this time. Ryan continued, "All this time I've been living a lie, trying to see our life as I wanted it to be, not as it really was. But I can no longer stand here in the shadow of this lie. This has to stop." In front of so many people, Emily felt like the world around her was collapsing. All her hard work, all her efforts to build a reputation and a good image in the public eye, were destroyed in an instant. Ryan had not only destroyed their marriage, but also ruined everything she had built. Emily wanted to say something, but the words wouldn't come out. Only a feeling of shame enveloped her. Ryan stared at Emily with eyes full of anger and disappointment. "I've had enough. I can no longer live in this lie," he said in a louder voice. Then he turned and left the place, leaving Emily and the entire audience in silence. Emily stood there, trapped in shame and regret. She knew that everything she had done to maintain her image had been destroyed in an instant. Nothing could fix this, no words could change reality. After that incident, Emily's life changed drastically. The betrayal that was revealed in public caused her to lose everything: her reputation, her job, and most importantly, her self-confidence. The whole world seemed to judge her based on Ryan's revelation at the conference, and even though she tried to rebuild her image, it all felt futile. Every time she spoke to someone, she felt looks of hatred or pity that made her feel even more isolated. Meanwhile, Ryan felt that even though his heart was broken, he actually felt free. Revealing the truth, though painful, gave him an indescribable sense of relief. He knew that the road ahead would be difficult, that his marriage would end, but he felt that he had to move forward. Divorce was an inevitable step, even though it was the hardest thing he had ever thought of. However, he felt that it was the only way to free himself from the shadow of betrayal that continued to follow him. In the midst of the long divorce process, Ryan tried to deal with his mixed feelings. He missed Emily, but he also felt betrayed in a way he couldn't accept. For the first time in his life, Ryan had to face reality without any protection. There were no more roles to play, no more happy faces to show the world. In these lonely moments, Ryan meets Grace, an old friend he hasn't seen in a long time. Grace is a childhood friend who left Ryan's life due to their different paths in life. They talk at length about life, about past mistakes, and about how they are each trying to find happiness in their own way. The conversation is a breath of fresh air for Ryan, who is in the midst of a slump. In Grace, he saw someone who had found peace even though life did not always go as expected. Grace wisely reminded Ryan that life is not only about the past, but also about how we rise from adversity. "You can't stay stuck in that pain," Grace said. "You have to give yourself a chance to grow, to find happiness again. That is your choice." Ryan began to reflect, slowly realizing that even though the betrayal was painful, his life did not end there. He had to move forward. The conversation with Grace became a turning point in his life, giving Ryan new hope to start his life over. However, Emily couldn't forget what she had done. Even though she tried to repair her image, the shadow of betrayal still haunted her. Every step she took, every effort she made to fix things felt futile. She realized that there was no going back, and every attempt only made things worse. Emily now lives in deep regret. She tries to face the reality that what she had done had destroyed more than just their marriage. It had destroyed herself and her self-esteem. Over time, she could only hope that maybe someday she would find peace within herself. Ryan began to get used to his new life. Although divorce was a difficult process, he felt that something greater was being built: himself. He spent more time with Grace, who was now his good friend. Their conversations became deeper and more open. Grace helped Ryan see the world in a different way, giving him the understanding that pain and loss were part of the process of life. Meanwhile, Emily felt trapped in the past. She tried to repair the damage she had caused, but every step she took felt like swimming against the tide. Her attempts to regain her reputation were unsuccessful. Emily tried to return to the industry she once loved, but the shadow of her betrayal continued to haunt her. In every presentation she gives and every conversation with her co-workers, she feels their questioning, even hateful glances. No matter how hard she works, her image is already tarnished. However, Emily does not give up so easily. She begins to take various self-improvement courses and tries to rebuild relationships with people she used to know. But deep down, she knew that her betrayal of Ryan could never be forgiven. She felt deep regret, but that regret could not bring back what was lost. On the other hand, Ryan began to find peace within himself. With each passing day, he felt stronger and more independent. He returned to work with renewed enthusiasm. His existence was no longer tied to a past full of lies. Ryan began to see the potential in himself that had been hidden all this time, and he decided to pursue the dreams he had once forgotten. One day, Ryan received an offer to move to another company that offered greater opportunities. This was a new chance for him to move forward, far from the shadows of the past. Although he felt hesitant to leave this small town, Ryan knew that this was the right move. Grace, who had been the biggest supporter in his life, encouraged him to take this step. "You deserve better, Ryan," Grace said sincerely. "Leave the old behind and start something new." Ryan nodded, knowing that this was the right time to step out of his comfort zone. He felt ready to start a new life, not only for himself, but also to find true happiness. In this small town, everything might seem like it's ending. But for Ryan, it was the beginning of a new journey. A journey to find peace within himself, to find a deeper meaning in life. Although Ryan has begun a new chapter in his life, the shadows of the past still haunt Emily. Day after day she tries to move on, but every time she thinks she has forgotten everything, the reality of the betrayal comes back to haunt her. She tries to rebuild her professional life, but she knows that, deep down, people still view her with suspicion. Her failed marriage to Ryan and the inevitable revelations became an unavoidable topic of public discussion. Her reputation in the workplace was completely ruined, and even though she worked hard to prove herself, guilt and regret always followed her. In every conference room, at every meeting with colleagues, Emily felt a gap separating her from them. All eyes seemed to judge her not for her work, but for the betrayal she had committed. However, Emily did not give up. She could not allow herself to continue wallowing in regret. After several months of struggle, Emily began to see a glimmer of hope. She received a job offer at a smaller organization, but with the opportunity to start over. Although it wasn't easy, Emily tried to accept the job wholeheartedly, hoping to regain the trust she had lost. However, even though she tried her best, she realized that her betrayal of Ryan still haunted her. Even in her small steps toward recovery, she felt a deep loneliness. Sometimes she would sit in her room alone, pondering, wondering if she would ever be able to forget everything or if she would continue to live in that shadow forever. On the other hand, Ryan felt a growing sense of freedom. Although losing Emily was painful, he had never felt more alive. He enjoyed his time at his new job and felt more appreciated by his colleagues. Grace, who continued to be a loyal friend, gave him unwavering support. Their conversations became more frequent, and Ryan felt closer to himself. He rediscovered his purpose in life and pursued dreams he had once neglected. Ryan knew that his life's journey was still long, but he felt that everything that had happened, both happiness and sadness, had shaped him into a stronger person. He was no longer stuck in the past. He learned to let go and make room for a brighter future. Emily, on the other hand, despite trying hard to improve her life, knew that she had to face the fact that not everything could be fixed. Her betrayal of Ryan would always be a part of her, and even though she wanted to forget it, she knew that it was part of her learning and changing. Sometimes she missed the past that once seemed perfect, but at the same time she knew that her life now had to move forward. As the days passed, Ryan began to feel more comfortable with his new life. The decision to move to a new company proved to be the right move. He felt more appreciated, and his job now presented greater challenges and opportunities for growth. He found peace in his simple routine, time at the office, relaxing evenings with Grace, and short walks to the park on weekends. Ryan felt as if he had rediscovered the part of himself that he had lost over the years. However, even though so much had changed, Ryan couldn't completely let go of his memories of Emily. There were times when he sat alone in his room and the shadows of the past came to him. Memories of the house they once shared, the lively afternoon barbecues, and Emily's laughter, which now felt so distant. Even though he tried not to think about it, a part of him still wanted answers as to why it had all ended so quickly and so painfully. On the other hand, Emily slowly began to accept the fact that life would never be the same again. Even though she managed to find a new job, she felt that something was missing. Behind her friendly smile and her desire to improve her image, she realized that her heart remained empty. She tried to live her life as best she could, focusing on her career, which was slowly taking off, but every night, when she returned to her lonely apartment, the loneliness haunted her. One afternoon, after several months had passed, Emily decided to contact Ryan. She knew that even though it was over, there were things she hadn't said, things she hadn't resolved. After weighing it up several times, she finally wrote a short message to Ryan. The message was brief, but it was enough to reopen communication between them. "Ryan, I know it may be too late, but I want to apologize from the bottom of my heart. I don't expect anything in return. I just want to say that I'm sorry and that I will always cherish our time together. I hope that one day we can talk again." Ryan sat for a moment, reading the message over and over. Even though he knew that betrayal could not be forgiven so easily, he felt a sense of relief in his heart. He felt that the message was a step towards healing, both for himself and for Emily. After thinking about it for a few days, Ryan finally replied to the message. "Emily, I appreciate what you said. The time we spent together is long gone, and I think we both need to move on with our lives. I also hope you find your happiness, even though we can't go back to the way we were." Ryan's reply wasn't the answer Emily had hoped for, but it was the reality she had to face. They had parted ways not only physically but also emotionally. However, a sense of peace began to grow in each of their hearts, even though there were still wounds that hadn't fully healed. After a brief exchange of messages between Ryan and Emily, they both moved on with their lives, despite feelings that were difficult to express. For Emily, even though Ryan didn't give her a chance to repair their relationship, there was a kind of peace in the answer she received. Ryan didn't want to get back together, and that was a reality she had to accept. She knew she had to respect Ryan's decision and move on. However, even so, Emily felt that something was still left behind, a wound that she couldn't heal with words or apologies. Every time she moved forward, she felt like she was stepping on memories that couldn't be erased. One night after finishing work, she sat in her quiet apartment, staring at old photos with Ryan that were still hanging on the wall. She wondered if they had ever been truly happy or if that happiness had been just an illusion. Ryan, on the other hand, felt that he had let go of the past with a lighter heart. Although Emily's betrayal still lingered in his memory, he knew he couldn't continue to live in that shadow. At the office, he was thriving, and the days he spent with Grace gave his life new meaning. Grace, who had always been his best friend, began to show signs that she was more than just a friend to Ryan. Although Ryan wasn't quite ready to open his heart again, he felt something different when he was with Grace, something that made him feel valued and cared for. One sunny afternoon, Ryan and Grace were walking in a park near the office after work. Their conversation was light, but there was something deeper to it. Ryan began to realize that he hadn't really given himself a chance for new love in his life. Grace, with all her warmth and understanding, might be someone who could help him move forward. "Ryan, I know this isn't easy for you, but you deserve to be happy again," Grace said softly as they sat on a park bench. "You've been stuck in the past for too long. Love isn't about perfection, but about giving ourselves a chance to be happy, even if we've been hurt." Ryan looked at Grace, feeling her words touch his heart more deeply than he had expected. He felt that he couldn't continue to live in bad memories, and that maybe, just maybe, he could find happiness again, not in the same way as before but by giving new things that came into his life a chance. Emily, although she never expressed her feelings directly, felt that she had to move on. She realized that she could no longer hope for a past that was long gone. Every time she looked ahead, she felt anxious about her future, but there was also a sense of curiosity, a curiosity about who she was now, who she was after everything that had happened. She knew that her life's journey was not over, and although it wasn't easy, she had to learn to accept the fact that she might always live with the shadow of her mistakes. At night, after hours of working hard to rebuild her career, Emily sat at her desk and wrote in her journal. "I don't know what will happen, but I know I have to keep going," she wrote. "Maybe someday I will find peace within myself." Time marches on, and even though both Ryan and Emily are living their own lives, they both still face major challenges in their journeys. For Emily, there are moments when she feels like giving up. Behind the smile she puts on at work and in front of others, there is a sense of loss that she cannot hide. Every time she looked at herself in the mirror, she wondered if she was still trustworthy, if she could still find her old self, or if she would always be trapped in the shadow of betrayal. However, she knew that she couldn't continue to dwell in regret. Every day he tries to take small steps to rebuild a better life. He gets involved in social activities, tries to form healthier relationships, and slowly begins to believe that there is life after everything that has happened. Whenever he feels anxious or afraid, he reminds himself to focus on the positive things, not to give in to the past that has destroyed him. On the other hand, Ryan begins to invest more in himself. He continues his growing career, and even though his relationship with Grace is getting closer, he remains cautious. Ryan still feels the trauma of Emily's betrayal, but he realizes that Grace is someone who appreciates him. He feels comfortable around her, and for the first time in a long time, he feels genuine peace. Although Ryan is not yet fully ready to commit to a new relationship, he is beginning to open his heart to the possibility. Grace never rushed him and patiently accompanied Ryan in his healing process. They talked about many things, about the past, about dreams, and about how they could support each other to become the best versions of themselves. Grace understood that Ryan couldn't immediately forget his past, but she also knew that Ryan deserved to be happy. One afternoon, after several months of Ryan opening up to Grace, They walked together in the city park, a place that always reminded Ryan of peace and tranquility. Grace held his hand gently, and Ryan felt that he was no longer alone. "I know I'm not completely healed yet," Ryan said slowly, "but I feel lucky to have someone who understands me like you do." Grace smiled, and they walked together without another word, simply enjoying their simple togetherness. Ryan began to feel that even though his life's journey was full of heartbreak and betrayal, there was beauty to be found in the midst of the chaos. Emily, on the other hand, found a way to move forward. Though the journey wasn't easy, she began to feel a peace slowly growing within her. She found the courage to continue living, to forgive herself, and to believe that she could find happiness even if everything wasn't perfect anymore. A few months after the divorce, Ryan began to feel that he could finally breathe freely. Although memories of Emily still came back from time to time, he realized that he had grown more than ever before. His relationship with Grace grew deeper, but he maintained an emotional distance, knowing that he had to give himself time to truly heal. Grace understood that Ryan couldn't just forget his past, and she gave him space to grow in a natural way without pressure. For Ryan, this was the perfect time to truly find himself. He began pursuing personal projects that he had been putting off, writing, exercising, and even planning a trip he had been dreaming of. All of this gave him an unexpected sense of accomplishment. He feels freer, more independent, and more aware of what he wants in life. His new life is full of new opportunities and hopes, and for the first time, Ryan feels that he can determine his own future. Meanwhile, Emily, despite struggling with the shadows of the past, begins to feel more at peace. She realizes that her betrayal of Ryan was a big mistake, but she cannot continue to live in regret. She began to find ways to rebuild her confidence. Her work was going well, and although she still felt that she was not fully accepted in some social circles, she knew that she had to keep trying. One night, after several months of feeling anxious and depressed, Emily sat alone in her apartment, writing in her journal. "I feel like I've lost everything, but on the other hand I feel stronger than ever," she wrote. "I know I can't go back to the past, but I also know that I have to allow myself to feel happiness again. Maybe it's time for me to start something new." After writing that, Emily felt a little relieved. She realized that she couldn't change what had happened, but she had the power to decide how she would continue her life. She began planning a small trip for herself, to find peace and rebuild her life. She felt that even though the past remained, she had the opportunity to improve her future. Ryan, who now enjoyed a freer life, knew that he had found a peace that had been difficult for him to achieve before. Grace remained by his side as an understanding friend. He felt ready to step into a new chapter in his life, unburdened, without regrets. Although he didn't know what the future held, Ryan knew one thing for sure. He had gone through difficult times and now found himself in a better place. Emily and Ryan's lives were now separate. They have learned to accept reality and strive to find happiness in their own ways. Although they are no longer together, both have grown into stronger individuals who better understand the meaning of freedom and peace in life. They realize that sometimes separation is part of the journey toward recovery, and even though the road is full of wounds, there are valuable lessons to be learned. With more confident steps, they both continue their life journey, knowing that although betrayal remains a part of their story, true peace and happiness can only be found when they are able to let go of the past and open their hearts to the future.